Well, hello out there. Happy Tuesday. I am Dr. Christine Anderson. I am a Los Angeles chiropractor for about 30 years, a mom of three, a wife. Um, and I am here tonight talking about viruses. Now, I know this is a topic that is on everybody's mind with COVID-19. And I know that viruses are kind of complex. I mean, it is a lot to try to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Each virus will act a bit differently, but I just want to talk about viruses in general and kind of take some of the mystique out of them. It's creating a lot of fear and panic. And I want to try and bring things down a notch here because information is power. And if you start to understand that things aren't quite so black and white, right? Then maybe you can relax a little and see that there are some strategies that you can take no matter what is going around, all right? So should we fear viruses? I think that's the big thing. Should we fear COVID-19? Well, let's kind of jump back a second and talk a little bit about the germ theory. The reason why this is so important, because if you ascribe to the germ theory, then you become a victim to whatever is out there. So this was back in 1861. A long time ago, and Pasteur published his germ theory and stated that germs cause disease. So you have a bacterium, you have a microbe, you come in contact with that microbe, it causes a disease. That was it. And this continues to be the accepted scientific theory today, even though Pasteur recanted this theory on his deathbed. And even though now we have more research, all right, a lot has gone on since 1861. So to me, this is kind of the equivalent of the Flat Earth Society, who's like, the earth is flat, the earth is flat. Well, we have pictures, well, and we've done this, no, we can no, I don't believe it, the earth is flat. So to me, the germ theory is kind of along the Flat Earth Society. Sorry if you're one of those. So on his deathbed, Louis Pasteur actually said, I have this as a quote, I don't know if this is the exact words, but Bernard was correct. I was wrong. The microbe or the germ is nothing. The terrain or milieu is everything. So in other words, we are not at the mercy of bacteria, viruses, fungi, whatever microbe is out there in our environment. And believe you me, there are germs everywhere. They're on your body right now. Even if you had a shower, even if you just wash your hands, germs are everywhere. We cannot get rid of germs. And you're going to see why in a moment. So if we have good health, what Bernard was saying is that if there's a good terrain, if you have good health, then disease will not occur even if you are exposed to this germ. And I love this kind of saying of, if you have a dump with rats and you exterminate the rats, they're going to come back. Get rid of the dump and the rats will cease to exist. If you don't have the right environment for rats, they're not going to take up residence. So the other reason why this germ theory is really disproven is our acknowledgement of the microbiome, and that the microbiome is necessary for our good health. And if you need to know more about that, you can go back to my episode on that. I'll put the link in the discussion. So the microbiome consists of 4.5 million genes. And to put that into perspective, there's 40 million stars in our galaxy. So a lot. There's a lot of genes of microbiomes existing in our body. In contrast, there are only 23,000 numbers, 23,000 genes in the human body. That's it. We are outnumbered by germs living in our body than we are our actual human cells. And when we speak of the microbiome, we're not only including bacteria, but we're also including viruses. Viruses also contribute to an aspect of our microbiome that they're now calling the virome. And we know currently that 8% of our genome, so our gene sequences, are from retroviruses. Now, I'm not going to get all into what are retroviruses as opposed to other viruses. That's not really important. But what is important is that we know that knowledge regarding viruses, composition, the interindividuality, how variable things are in the environment, we know that this type of knowledge is increasing. And we see that there could be a significance of the virome on human health, balance in our life, or homeostasis, and also how it relates to disease. So similar to bacteria, resident viruses help modulate our immune responses. And that could be good or bad, depending on what your balance of your microbiome is. So we have to go back to what actually are viruses. And people, I don't know what most people are thinking viruses are like, but they are not like bacteria. Bacteria can come into our bodies and they can float around independently and they multiply themselves, and they can attach to our cells and start creating changes. That's a whole nother subject. But viruses are way different. They're not just single things floating around. And they are often described as existing somewhere between living and inanimate objects because they don't make their own energy. They're actually not really alive, and you can't transmit them without a living host. So that is important because viruses do not want to kill their host. They don't want to be so deadly and virulent that the person actually dies. So that's super important too, because if you look at viruses that come into a virgin population, in other words, it's a new virus, we haven't really seen it before, or that variation, viruses normally will come in. And who are the most vulnerable? Well, the ones that are sick, right? We talked about the terrain, the ones that don't have good health, the ones that have comorbid issues. And those are the ones that are going to succumb. And usually those are the ones that only succumb to dying. We might get the disease. So just same thing. We get the cold virus. We don't think anything of it. But when the settlers came to Native America, and those Native Americans had not been exposed to the rhinovirus or the cold virus, that was deadly for them. And it probably, now I don't know, but I'm assuming it occurred during maybe a time where there were food shortages. It was probably winter where they were cold. So remember our environment of how we're living, what we're eating, how much nutrition, if we're stressed. Stress is a big one. If our systems are stressed, fear stresses you. Just saying. And you can go back and look at my episode on the immune system and how to moderate stress for more information on that. But we can't just look at viruses solely as like an entity that, is invading. It's not like this army that comes in and we don't have any defenses. We have plenty at our disposal as long as we take care of ourselves. So there was a 2015 study that was the first study to look at the actual molecular structure and issue of viruses. And this is super important. Now, they specifically looked at the influenza virus, but we can translate this in general to what viruses are doing and looking like. Now, the study abstract opens up with this line. Virions, also known as viral particles, and which are the means by which viral nucleic acids are able to move and infect living organisms. And without that viral particle, which you can think of like a taxi, to carry around the virus DNA, which you can think of as a passenger, it would be harmless. So you need both of those components. You can't just have RNA and DNA, which is nuclear material, just floating around. That virus needs to have both things. It needs to have that genetic material, and it needs to have this outer envelope. And that's important because this is going to make an effect on how we think of these viruses, not just being pathogenic strings of RNA and DNA. Because here's the irony. The very things we attribute so much lethality to, which is the viral nucleic acids, right? The virus is deadly. That's what everybody says. But they're not alive. So they can't infect an organism, which is us. They can't infect us without all those other components. Proteins, fats, extra viral nucleic acids, right? All those things they need to infect us, and those are not viral in origin. All right, we have proteins, we have lipids, right? So stay with me. Therefore, if the components that are non-viral are essential for the virus to cause harm, then how can we continue to justify that we're up against a disease entity that's, out there and it's infecting us and we're the passive victim, we can't do anything about it. Furthermore, they found that the flu virus is as much comprised of biological material from the host that the virus infects, so the person, as the viral genetic material of that virus. So it's a combination thing. It's not just, a flu virus comes in and infects a cell. It comes in and infects a cell, but then you have a combination of material from the host or the person with the viral information. And that's really what it is. It's information. So this is super important because how do we differentiate viruses that have infected a host or as fully other if we're combining the host with the virus material itself? It becomes very complex. And that becomes a problem when we try to make it very simple, as in this virus is infecting you and you're going to get sick and die. It's not that simple. It also creates a complexity for testing. So if you're doing testing, how can you just test for a virus if it's incorporated with the genetic material of the host? Because you're not going to be able to just test for one thing. And indeed, with the COVID-19, there's the PCR test. And when you look at that, it's actually testing for genetic material, not for the virus itself. So there's a fault in that. I don't think they should be calling it a COVID-19 test. I don't know what they should call it, but I'm just trying to start you thinking. I'm just trying to generate like these thought processes of, maybe there's some gray area in between here. Maybe it's not this black and white thing. I don't have all the answers. I can tell you that. And you know what? Scientists are still learning about all this. So we have to kind of keep up with the times and look at what they're talking about. And there's actually a lot of scientists, virologists talking about this, because it is so complex. And it may be the other reason why it's been very, very difficult to create a coronavirus vaccine, which they've been trying forever. Well, at least since the SARS situation, was that 10 years ago or something like that? They've been trying to make one since then, and it hasn't been working. And this may be one of the problems because if you're interacting genetic material from people with the virus, it's going to be very hard to make a vaccine. So, yeah, this is the part where we're all in it together, trying to uncover the truth about what's going on and figuring out what we can do and be proactive. Because the fear that's generated, I really do not think is warranted based on information that is out there. So, another thing researchers are talking about is the discovery that virion particles, remember those are the things viruses give off, share a similarity to naturally occurring teeny weeny eeny virus like particles produced by every single living cell, including our living cells, called exosomes. So think of it this way. You're in a high rise in Manhattan, you're looking out the window, and think of Manhattan as one organism, and every building is a cell. And taxis and people are out on the street, you can think of them as the exosome, so super tiny from your view from the heights, right? They're running around, they're communicating, and these exosomes are very powerful mediators and signalers. And they change the behavior of neighboring cells and regulate the expression of the vast majority of our human genome. Okay, that is super important because when we start to look at the overlap of how similar viruses are with exosomes, then we can start to understand how their function could be considered neutral as informational carriers or even possibly beneficial to our health, especially if we start talking about the change in genetic expression. So I'm asking you to look at viruses in a post-germ theory perspective, one that looks at viruses as a piece of information. And this is, again, it gets a little complicated. So this is a way that we can possibly adapt to present time, what's going on in present time, in a very immediate fashion. And this is because of a genotype-phenotype relationship. Genotype being your genetic structure, and then phenotype is your expression of those genes. Are they turned on? Are they turned off? And that is how we can adapt. And it's not survival of the fittest, it's the ones that survive are the ones that adapt. Because if we were to wait for our actual genes to change spontaneously, it could take 100,000 years. And if you have an immediate situation going on, you need that to happen sooner rather than later. Now, I am not saying that all viruses are good. Clearly, that's, again, a black and white situation. There's not all somewhere in between. And sometimes given certain conditions like comorbid factors, right? We keep hearing comorbid factors. What does that mean? Well, that means that a person has health issues and challenges, and therefore their body is not functioning optimally. The messages could get garbled from the viruses. It could go haywire, and therefore then they have a disease symptom. And typically we look at disease symptoms as a bad thing, whereas I look at them like messages that the body is attempting to self-regulate and self-heal and improve the situation using what it has available. And fever is a great example of that. What do people want to do? We want to bring the fever down, bring the fever down. Well, why is the fever there? The fever is the way the body says, oh, we have this situation going on. Let's jack up the temperature. Yeah, you're going to feel like crap. But guess what? So is the pathogen invading your system. We know viruses don't like heat. That's why there's a cold and flu season in the winter, because it's cold and the sun is not shining and people aren't going outside and they're not getting their vitamin D, and they may not be eating as fresh fruits and vegetables, on and on and on and on, right? So, the best defense against any microbe, whether it be virus, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, parasites, whatever it is basically to clean your dump up. All right. If you're not taking care of your health, you are creating an environment for things to have a toehold. So if you ascribe to the 7 facets of health, which I talk about in episode number 1, and I'll put a link in the description, then there's no opportunity for any microbes to thrive. That is why I don't have fear. I don't have fear because I trust in my innate process, my healing process, that I am going to be fine no matter what. My body will take care of it. I'm doing what I can possibly do. I have a dad who is 76 and he has heart disease. He's at risk. I still don't have fear for him. He is healthy despite his comorbid issue. I know he's eating right. He's getting out. He's walking. He has a girlfriend. There's other positive things that I know he's doing. Do I tell him to just go out and have a jolly good time? No, not necessarily, because I don't want his system to become stressed that way. But he's got heart disease, and that may be something that, as far as I know, it could happen anytime. So I want him to be able to live his life fully for as long as he possibly can and enjoy it for what it is. So I hope this helps. I hope it hasn't confused you. You can write in the comments what you think or ask me questions. If you like what I have to say, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe so you know when I am putting a video out. And share with your friends. Let them know that it's okay to wash your hands and take precautions, but this whole thing of isolation and distancing is not the thing that's going to keep us healthy and safe. All right, have a great Tuesday. I will see you next week, and get to those 7 facets of health. Bye.